Kentucky and Indiana, all over the country, Tennessee. And so as I begin a few remarks, I wonder if we could just pause for a moment in silence and remember those that are suffering and offer a word in our own way of support. Thank you.
Aim high, cranes!
Now that person that just yelled out, aim high, cranes. How in the world did he know that was the cheer of my high school? Somebody from Cranbrook School back when the area, okay, there's a Cranbrook crane. Who in the world would name their mascot the Cranes? Right? But it's better than my wife's school's mascot. They were the aardvarks. Look, I sure remember growing up in the Midwest. You got a border security problem here in Ohio. You let people from Michigan across the border. I came out or I guess yesterday or the day before. And I grew up in a wonderful place. I was born in Detroit. It's not as nice as it was when I was there. Boy, the tough times they've had there, extraordinary. But when I grew up, I was in elementary school. I remember my first day of school. There must have been 30 kids or so in the classroom in kindergarten. My guess is that every parent that sent a child to that school believed in the promise of America. They believed that if their child learned the right values and got an education and was willing to work hard, that they'd be prosperous and have a safe home, and that their future would be brighter than even the life that their parents had lived. That's been the promise of America from the very beginning. But that promise is becoming frayed for a lot of people. You got 24 million Americans out of work today, or stopped looking for work, or just in part-time work because they can't get full-time employment. You've got home values that have gone down. The median income in America has dropped by 10% in the last 4 years. That promise is questioned. And there are other promises that are not doing so well. The president, back as candidate Obama, he said he would cut the deficit in half. He's doubled it, all right? He's doubled it. He said that he'd get this economy going in 3 years. He was on the Today Show. He said, if I can't turn around this economy in 3 years, I'll be looking at a one-term proposition. Yeah! He said he was going to cut taxes for middle-income taxpayers. Have you seen that? Actually, Obamacare raises taxes on the American people. He's out of ideas. He's out of excuses. And in 2012, we're going to make sure he's out of a job. Yeah. I actually think this is a battle over the direction of America. I think this president is making us more and more like Europe. I don't think Europe works in Europe. It's not going to work here. But his approach, and you can see it piece by piece. Let me just contrast it. Number one, he believes that we can sustain trillion-dollar deficits. Every year, he keeps adding up another $1 trillion. As a matter of fact, he's on track by the end of his first term, and his only term. Yeah. He is on track to put together almost as much public debt as all the prior presidents combined. Can you imagine such a thing? If I'm president, I'm going to get rid of programs. I'm going to send programs back to states. I'm going to cut back on the size of the federal government. I am finally going to get for America a balanced budget. Woo! I happen to think that this spending, massively more than we take in, is bad economics. And I also think it's immoral. I think it's wrong for us to pass burdens onto our kids, knowing we'll never pay it back. They'll get stuck with the interest and the principal for year after year after year. It kills the American dream. It kills their future. I don't know why any college student in America doesn't vote for Republican. How in the world they can vote for people that put these burdens on them? I'll never know. I'll end it. Put the future bright for our kids.
That's right.
There's some other differences. When it comes, for instance, to the ability to create jobs in this economy, the president has a plan. Raise taxes. Now think about that. If you take more money away from the entrepreneurs and the innovators that normally help build the economy, you're not going to have as many jobs, and you're not going to have rising incomes. My plan is to do just the opposite. I'm going to lower taxes across the board by 20% and get jobs growing in America again.
All right.
The president's view on energy is also very different than my own. I saw someone with a sign up there a moment ago. Coal equals jobs. Who's got that sign? I saw it a second ago. There it is. There it is right there. He rolled it out. He's got it back there. Look, he's absolutely right. Coal, oil, gas, nuclear, these things create jobs, not just in bringing out the energy, but making sure we have secure sources of energy so that manufacturers and other employers want to come here and use those resources. This president has held off on coal with higher and higher regulations. He's held off on deep sea oil drilling. He's made it harder and harder to rely on natural gas by having the EPA try and govern the fracking technology associated with natural gas. And of course, he's failed the first no-brainer decision I think we've seen the president have to face in a long time. He said no to a pipeline of oil from Canada. Was he?
Absolutely.
If I'm president, we're going to take advantage of our energy resources, and we're going to get that oil from Canada. The president is fond of what I'll call, crony capitalism. The idea is that you still call it capitalism, but the guys in charge in government get to decide where to put your money. And so he has his friends at Solyndra and Enter1 and Tesla and Fisker, and he gives your money to them. By the way, they lose it. And he thinks he's somehow helping the economy and helping with new technology. Let me just take you for a moment to think about this. When he gives $500 million to Solyndra, saying he wants to encourage solar energy, think about what it really does. All the other entrepreneurs in America, maybe 100 of them, that had ideas for solar technologies, think what happens to their capacity to raise money. They go to their friends and say, hey, I've got this great idea. Would you invest in my business? They look and say, well, the government just gave $500 million to Solyndra. And so all the other entrepreneurs, they lose their funding. So rather than encouraging new technology, what he does is discourage it. I want to end crony capitalism and return to the free market dynamics that made America the powerhouse that we are. Absolutely. Then look what he's doing to our military. He just announced $500 billion in cuts to our military, slowing down the purchases of ships, of aircraft, cutting our troops by 50 to 100,000. Do you know the status of our military? I mean, I've been watching this maybe a little more closely than you have lately. The number of ships in our Navy, fewer than any time since 1917. Number of aircraft in our Air Force, smaller number of aircraft and older fleet than any time since 1947 when the Air Force was formed. And of course, our troops are stretched to the limit. When we just watched them in Iraq and Afghanistan, rotation after rotation, and yet he wants to cut. My view is that a strong America is the best ally peace has ever known, and we must have a superior military. This is not just about winning wars. It's being so strong that no one would ever test us. It's recognizing that American strength is the best ally we have. This is the right course for the nation. And so I'm going to increase shipbuilding from 9 to 15 a year. I'm going to increase the purchases of aircraft. I'm going to add 100,000 troops to our active duty personnel. And I'm also going to make sure that our veterans get the care they deserve. This election is a battle between two very different visions for America. One, a government-dominated, Washington-led nation. The other, a nation that returns to the principles and values that made us the nation we are. You go back to the Declaration of Independence, and those words, inspired, brilliant, changed the world, and made this the place The people wanted to come. Every pioneer, every innovator wanted to come here because of these words. That the Creator had endowed us with our rights. Not the state, not the king, but the Creator. And among them were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes, sir.
In this country, we would be free to pursue happiness as we choose. Not as President Obama tells us, but as we choose.
You bet.
And by virtue of those freedoms, liberty, the protection of our life, and the freedom to pursue our course in life as we choose, people did come here. The pioneers and innovators and creators built enterprises. And their success did not make us poorer. Their success made us better off. I want to restore those principles again. Get Washington out of the way of the American people. Encourage free people and free enterprises. And if we do, America will continue to be the shining city on a hill. It can happen. It will happen. I want to do one more thing. Just as I listened to you sing the national anthem, I was touched. It was wonderful to hear the soloist, but just as wonderful to hear you singing with her.
That's right.
And we were singing behind that flag as well. And I just want to tell you an experience I had at the Olympics in 2002. And I've told this story before, but you haven't heard it most likely. And it was inspiring to me. It reminds me of my confidence in the American people, because of the passion and faith the people in this country have in America. This was at the closing ceremonies. The President Bush, had come at the opening. At the closing, the Vice President, Dick Cheney, came. He asked me to choose an athlete to sit with him, to represent all the athletes. I chose Derek Parra. Derek's about 5'4". He's Hispanic American, born in Los Angeles, rollerblader, and his friend said, "You'll never get a medal in rollerblading. So if you want to get an Olympic medal, you better pick up another sport." He tried on skates. Not a lot of ice rinks around Los Angeles, but he tried on skates, found a rink to go to, and was fast. He decided to work at it. He took on the big fellas from Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Minnesota, and beat them. Became a member of the U.S. speed skating team. Came out to the Olympics. Skated his heart out. Won a silver medal in the 5,000 meters. And a gold medal in the 1,500 meters. Fastest man in the world on ice. And by the way, a world record. Can you imagine being the best in the world at anything? So I chose him to represent the American athletes at the closing ceremonies. He came into the box with the Vice President. I stopped him and said, "Derek, what was the most meaningful memory of your Olympic Games?" And I expected it to be the gold medal. It wasn't the silver, it wasn't the gold. He said it was being honored to carry in the American flag that had flown above the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001 in the opening ceremony.
Yeah.
And that flag's about 8 feet by 12 feet. It's torn, badly burned, and so you can't put it up a flagpole. You have to carry it in. There were about 8 athletes that were selected by their peers to carry it in. He said when it was announced in the stadium, we thought people would burst into cheers, but instead total silence, complete reverence. And he said, so we carried the flag and stopped in front of the choir, and they began singing the national anthem. And he said, Mitt, it was hard to hold on to my emotions as they were singing those words, and I was holding that flag. And then he said the choir did something he hadn't expected. Now, I knew it was coming, because as the guy in charge of the Olympics, I got to choose the version of the national anthem they sang. And the version I sang was an arrangement from the 1930s by someone named Robert Shaw. And in this version, you sing the last verse, the last stanza, a second time as a reprise. And this time, the sopranos go up an octave. And there's much greater orchestration. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And he said this time, as they sang it again, a gust of wind blew in the flag and lifted it in their hands. And he said, Mitt, it was as if the spirits of all those that had fought and died for American liberty had just blown in that flag. And tears began to run down my face. That love of America, that appreciation for the sacrifice for our men and women in uniform, that commitment to freedom, to life, and to the pursuit of happiness, brings us together as a people. We're watching the president divide America right now. but we're one nation under God.
That's right.
If I'm the President of the United States, I will bring us together, keep America strong, and make sure we always remain the hope of the earth. Thank you so much.